Okay. Hey Drew, how are you doing today?
Hey, good,
Good.
good.
What's on the agenda for this weekend for you?
For me, well, I've got three young kids, so it's all centered around them all the
Yeah.
time. So we've got T-ball this weekend. Big matchup against the Angels.
Yeah.
So super, super pumped about that. And actually, for a weekend, we're going to some fall festival event and getting some pictures taken. And other than that, just chilling out. How about you?
Uh, I am hopefully like not like a crazy busy weekend. I had my brother here last weekend or last week, so I'm tired from that, it was really fun. I went to my first NASCAR event. I didn't,
Nice.
that was actually kind of fun. Like
Yeah.
I definitely have a different opinion, like an opinion about NASCAR. It was it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Great people watching.
Yeah, that actually it was surprising. Well, we had really good seats. So
Uh-huh.
my brother bought the tickets and we were like right at the start and finish line on the second row.
Okay.
So we had some of the best seats, so I couldn't complain. But yeah, I was impressed with the event. Man, they drive fast. It was like so
Yeah.
fast. So
First time I went to a NASCAR event, my dad took us when I was like, I don't know, maybe fifth or sixth grade, something like that.
mhm.
And it was at in Charlotte. And he got club seats through his company.
Oh, very
And
nice.
he was entertaining a client. And he was like, I got extra tickets, so I'm gonna bring the boys with me. And
Yeah,
but club seats are great for entertaining clients. They're terrible for children because you have
yeah,
to dress up and it's
yeah,
enclosed and professional. And like we're sitting there, like, I want to hear the engines. I want to see the cars go, and you've
yeah,
entrapped me in this glass box that I don't really want to be in.
yeah.
So it was interesting, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And we were like right in the middle of it where you could feel
you
the
can feel the
vibration.
cars.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you could feel it and smell that. Like I didn't understand all the jokes, like when you watch Talladega Nights and there's all like the burning rubber and the
yeah,
vibration. Yeah, I was like, okay, I get all the jokes make sense now.
yeah.
After going to the event, but yeah, I was pretty impressed. It was up at Charlotte, so yeah. So we had a super busy weekend last weekend, so I'm kind of like ready to chill this weekend a little bit, but realtors don't really typically chill. So
No, no. When weekends are high time for people to go look at stuff, right?
yeah, yeah. So it'll probably be, maybe, realtor work, but that's kind of
Yeah,
it. But
it's
not,
all right.
yeah, not complaining. So I am so excited that you're here with me today, and we're going to chat a little bit about home inspections. This is Drew. I can't talk today.
It's
Branyon.
brew Dranion.
Yeah, that's about it. From Home Team Home Inspections. And we're going to talk all about just home inspections. So, first of all, tell me a little bit how you got into the home inspection business.
Yeah. So it's actually kind of a weird story. I got into it completely by accident.
Hmm.
So I wanted to be a sports broadcaster
Hmm.
growing up, and started going down that path and realized once I got married and we started talking about kids and all that it was awesome when I was 25 and single.
Yeah,
Hard family life, traveling all the time, nights, weekends, holidays.
yeah,
Surprisingly, when you have a face for radio, you don't get paid a whole lot. So, I didn't have the pretty TV face and all that, but so decided to go into my own thing. I have run a radio station in the past, so I knew I wanted to do something on my own.
hmm,
My mom's a realtor. My brother's a home inspector,
hmm,
and they both were at the time that made the jump 10 years ago. And my dad's a franchise coach, and he was
uh,
like, "Hey, just go check out Home Team." Because me and your brother might want to open something. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like I'll entertain you, whatever.
yeah,
And really like the concepts. And Home Team's concept from a ownership standpoint is they don't want me to be a home inspector. They want me to be a business owner, right? They
mhm,
want me to do things like this and get the
yeah,
word out and develop the relationships and run people on site. And I really liked that idea. And it's hard it's hard to think back because most people that are in the industry now weren't in it 10 years ago. But
Yeah.
10 years ago, like the inspection world was completely different, right? Like it was, you had to wait 2 to 3 weeks to get inspection done.
Mm.
No one did multiple services. Everybody just did home inspection and maybe radon testing. And we were one of the first ones really in the market to come in with a full one call does it all service and doing things faster and guaranteeing 48-hour turnaround times, and was able to launch us pretty quickly. And then, like good entrepreneurs, a whole bunch of other guys started coming in the market and copied what we were doing, which is what you
Yeah.
should do, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
so it's been interesting to see like how things have changed over 10 years. But yeah, completely by accident. I am not the guy that should be doing anything other than maybe changing a light bulb in a house.
Yeah.
I say that now, like I know way more now than I did 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But that's it doesn't home inspections doesn't fit my personality, but doing stuff like this does, right?
Yeah.
And being in front of people, and I like being creative, and I like um efficiencies and business efficiencies, and I like service and helping people and feeling like we're genuinely helping people with something big, right? Or potentially showing them things that prevents them from making a big mistake,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. For
it's
sure.
been, yeah, like I felt like I was kind of like playing a child's game in sports,
Yeah.
right? I was like, it's cool to get paid for this, but like I don't feel like I'm actually providing value to the world by talking about what I see in front of me, as fun as it is. Like, and I've still got a lot of friends in it, but yeah, so that's how I got into it.
Very cool. Very cool. So we love using your company. I do love it that you're like a
Mhm.
one-stop shop. It makes it so much easier, and then so much I mean, you have so many options for clients. So we love
Yeah,
using you, and because of the speed, it really helps with the way we handle business and handle our home inspections. I mean, we want to wrap it up right away. Let's figure it out. We need to know right away. So you are one of my favorite home inspection companies. So I'm super
appreciate that.
grateful. Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for doing such a great job. We appreciate it. So I had some questions for you. We're going to talk all about home inspections today.
Yeah.
Um, we'll just top off, like start with like, what do you think the biggest misconception is about home inspections and what buyers need to know about the process?
I think like the biggest misconception, and I don't know that it's a misconception. I think there's a giant misconception about what we do, right? And I think so much of that plays into what what realtors do in terms of leading with expectations heading into the process, right? We try to educate as best we can
Yeah.
about what it is we do, what it is we don't do. And I always say like we have some realtors that say we love home team because they don't miss anything. They're going to see everything in the house. I'm like, that's actually not true
Yep.
at all, right? And
Yep.
like I appreciate the sentiment, but don't set us up for failure
Yeah.
because there's just no possible way that we can see everything. So I think like
Yeah.
understanding that it is a visual inspection. It is not designed to catch everything. And
Mhm.
there are gonna be things that are gonna pop up after you move into a house. And, I hear from people all the time. They're like, I bet your job's hard because everybody expects a perfect house. And
Mhm.
that's not true.
Yeah.
But what people do expect is that nothing is going to change from the time of the inspection until they move in. And a house is a moving, breathing thing,
Mhm.
especially if you're in the market for a vacant home.
Yeah.
Um, Vacant home, like house systems are designed to be used, they're not meant to sit, right?
Yeah.
So things change a lot. I mean, you even look at, unfortunately, what's happened in North Carolina the last couple of weeks, like with hurricanes and all that stuff. Like you have one of those storms come in, I mean, everything's going to change, right?
Yeah.
Um, I always make a joke of like every time it rains, I'm like, oh, someone's going to say that we should have told them that things get wet when it rains, but that's that's kind of what it is. So I think a lot of people expect us to predict the future. They expect us to see hidden things.
Mhm.
And while we can see a lot of things, we are generalists, so we are your primary care physician, right? We can tell you what potentially exists with your knee, but we're ultimately going to recommend you to an orthopedic surgeon because they know knees and we don't,
Yeah.
right? Um, we know a lot of things about a lot of things, but I'm not a general contractor. I'm not a plumber. I'm not an electrician. We can
Yeah.
help guide you in the process, but like we talked about, just a second ago, like if there's something wrong with the electrics, we can point out what that is and what a potential concern is, but I'm not the guy that's going to fix that.
Yeah.
Right. You
Yeah.
don't want me fixing that. Like you want us identifying what the issue is. Because a lot of general contractors and tradespeople can't identify things the same way that we can't either. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the biggest misconception is just not fully understanding what it is that we cover, what it is that we don't cover, that we're, inspecting permanently installed systems in a house,
Mhm.
that, like you're from time to time, you're probably dealt with this, like you're going to experience a client that has an issue with their underground sewer line that
Oh yeah.
we couldn't see. Right.
Yeah.
Our basement flooded 3 weeks after we moved in, and my wife was like, why did one of your guys miss this? And I'm like, well, we can't sue ourselves.
Yeah.
So let's just like calm down a little bit. Right.
Yeah.
Um, but the truth of it is, like, we're in a house for 2 to 4 hours, and there are just going to be some things that you can't see without taking a bath or taking a shower or using a toilet the way that it's actually intended to be used instead of flushing clean water down, right? And using the garbage disposal and turning things on and off and slamming doors and all that stuff. Like you're gonna experience some things that aren't caught. Now, major structure concerns,
Mhm.
major mechanical concerns, overall condition of the house, like that's really what we're here to do to get you a better understanding of what you're going to buy.
Yeah, 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 definitely. You just made me think about we have rentals, and we just one of our rentals, we have a renter in there now, but we put a new toilet in and like all the new things, and they're like the toilet's leaking and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, well, it's brand new, but it's just been sitting. But I think it's just because somebody's been in there using it. And I
Yep.
knew just by leaving it, I wondered what's going to pop up just because it's been sitting for like 2 months after we put it in. So it totally makes sense to me when you say that. And it is one of the things you try to build up expectations with buyers, and for
Yep.
sure. What should a buyer expect during a home inspection? Lay that out, because I mean, that's one of my number one questions that buyers have for me.
Yeah. I mean, so what you should expect is to be overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing, right? It's especially if you're a first time home buyer, you're going to be overwhelmed. You're gonna feel like the house is falling down.
Yeah.
And we've now done over 10,000 transactions, and there's probably a small handful of ones that we're like, yeah, this might actually fall down.
Yeah.
There's been a couple that we've walked away from because of safety concerns, that I didn't want guys falling through the floor or having a house collapse on them or something like that. But it is, I mean, you're talking about the 0.1%, 0.01% of
Yeah.
houses that we see. So, it's going to feel that way. It is not that way.
Yeah.
And, the thing that I think, like, there's going to be some scary stuff that shows up in houses, right? Like you're going to be dealing with mold. You're going to be dealing with structural concerns and roofing issues and HVAC issues. But I think, especially now that we're past the COVID crazy,
Yeah.
um, almost everything can be negotiated,
Yeah.
right? And I think, like, that's the part, like, inspectors get called deal killers a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because we find stuff, and the truth of it is, it's not like, not killing a deal is not about not finding things. It's
Mhm.
about how to explain it in a way that keeps everybody calm. Because, like, it's, sometimes, like, the buyer just doesn't want the issue and they don't want to live in a house that has that issue, and that's totally fine, right? But I think, like, one of my best friends lives in a house we did an inspection on and had close to $50,000 worth of structural concerns,
Mm.
and they got it negotiated because their agent was a rock star against a for sale by owner. So if you're watching this and you aren't represented,
Yeah.
go get your real estate agent, a good one, and Carrie's one of them. But like, they were able to get that negotiated. They were able to get it fixed. They've been living in the house now for 8 years, completely fine, right? So I think, like, understanding that it's overwhelming, it's going to feel scary, it's going to be really, really thorough. There's 40 issues that might show up, and maybe 5 are important.
Yeah.
And most of them are just things that you just need to know, or maybe are like a, hey, like, this is going on that you might want to pay attention to at some point. But then, after the inspection, on getting things negotiated and getting it to where you have a full understanding of what am I moving into? What am I buying? And am I getting this at a reasonable price, right? And then what are you willing to live with?
Yeah, 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 definitely, definitely. And from working with you guys so much, we've learned a lot so that we can like
Mm.
see items too. We're like, we don't know, but it doesn't surprise us when you come in. And so it's been really
Right.
helpful with that, is learning from your guys, all of you guys. And I mean, it better helps us serve our clients for sure. Yeah, those for sale by owners. My best deals.
Yep.
So how do you recommend to a buyer how to choose a home inspector?
So I think there's a couple things that I would look at. One, like you have to understand that the inspector works for you,
Mhm.
right? So you need to be comfortable with who that is and how they handle their business, right? We're not a fit for everybody. We had a guy call the other day where the realtor called me and was like, "This guy is picking us apart, and I really want to use you, but he wants X, Y, and Z." And I'm like, then he should go call another company, right? Because we aren't providing what he's looking for.
Yeah.
And like we provide a lot of services, but we don't provide everything. And if there's somebody that has a certain niche that they want to serve, like go find that person, right? And we can help introduce you to those people too, right? Like there's lots of good inspectors in the area.
Yeah.
Um, but it's I think like you have to look at reputation,
Mhm.
right? So Google's not everything, but Google is something, right?
Yeah.
Because even if there are negative, like we have negative reviews on our Google, we have way more 5-star reviews than we have negative ones, but
Yeah.
you will see how we handle feedback, right? You will see that it's handled professionally. You'll see that we're not dodging things. And I think like ultimately, like that's a big thing because this is a natural conflict of interest when you're getting referred by your realtor,
Yeah.
right? You're getting referred by your realtor. Like human nature is going to say, like, yeah, well, she wants the deal closed. So of course she's going to recommend the guy that's going to help her get the deal closed. And like I feel like we do help do that while watching out for the client, right? Like
Yeah.
we're not going to stand in the way of helping get a deal closed if that's in the client's best interest, right? We're not
Mhm.
going to throw out unnecessary things just to puff out our chest and say, "Hey, look what's here," right?
Yeah.
Experience matters, but experience, like think of experience in not in terms of years, but in terms of transactions and what they deal with, right? So like we've been in business for 10 years. There's guys that have been in here for 30, but we lap most everybody in number of transactions we've done, right?
Yeah.
Like we've got over 10,000 transactions where the average home inspector does 100 150 a year,
Yeah.
right? So we have tons of experience under our belt that even though we have guys that are with me now that haven't been with me for 10 years and haven't been home inspectors for 10 years, but they're learning based on the experiences that I have that we can help portray through, right? And I
Yeah.
think another one is like, what protections do you have in that, right? Error and omission is a big thing when
Mhm.
it comes to insurance. North Carolina does not require that of home inspectors.
Mhm.
So oftentimes, it's a low barrier of entry, just like real estate,
Yeah.
right? When people say like home inspections is hard to get into, like it's really not. Like when you try to get into other specialized trades
Yeah.
and as a license holder, and um, so there are a lot of guys that are literally operating on $500 in the bank,
Yeah.
right? And like doesn't mean that they're a bad inspector. It just means that when stuff goes wrong, like are your clients really going to be taken care of?
Yeah.
And that's something that we pride ourselves on is that like we're not perfect, we're not going to nail everything, but when we don't,
Uh,
we answer the phone, right? We
yeah.
answer the phone, we show back up, we take a look at it, we listen to you. You may not like our solution,
Mhm.
but I've put new roofs on houses, I've treated termites, I've done all sorts of things because we live up to what I think is the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've talked a lot about, just about different things with home inspectors, but is there specific questions that they should ask, if they want to search for their own home inspector? Because I've had this happen, where clients are like, no, I don't want to use yours, I want to use mine. And I'm like, okay,
Yep.
that's cool. I mean, I don't care. It's whatever, they want to do. But what questions would you suggest if they want to go out there and search for their own?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good question. I would ask what their process is,
Hmm.
right? So how is it that you inspect a house, right? What all is covered?
Hmm.
How do you approach that,
Hmm.
right? What all services do you recommend?
Hmm.
Um, and just kind of get a feel for what company is, right? Like, I mean, you can tell when people answer the phone, they're like, "Hey,"
Yeah.
right? Like, are you really like you might get a good again, might get a good inspector, but are you going to get somebody that's professional that's going to be there, long term? Like, check out the website, check out social media
Yeah.
presence. You can like I mean, I do a lot of social media stuff and a lot of videos. Like, you can tell
Yeah.
if you search us out and search me out individually, like you can tell that like we know what we're doing because we showcase that, right? Like we want to show our clients that we know what we're doing before we get there,
Yeah.
right?
For
Because it
sure.
like you're making a big bet on this,
Hmm.
right? Like it sucks if you pick the wrong guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For
But
sure. And then
you
they
know,
miss something. I mean,
yeah, right. But like there
everyone's gonna
are
miss something, but you know what I mean?
yeah, like you don't want to miss something big and
Yeah.
obvious, right? And experience has a lot to do with that. So I'd be asking, how many inspections do you do a year? How many inspections have you done in your career?
Hmm.
Um, what are the things that you think separate you from other home inspectors?
Hmm.
And like you'll get a comfort level for
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Um,
And also, I feel like one question I've had because when some of my clients have chosen their own, like, what's your turnaround with the home inspection? Like what is that? Because that's what I've run into. Because with you guys, I know I expect it. Like it's good. We get it right away.
right.
I feedback right away. I can call you. I can text you. And what I had dealt with other companies is that I'm waiting. Like one home inspector, I think I waited 2 weeks, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, we gotta
Well,
go.
and some of like that's a lot of like that's expectation driven too, right? Like, as a typical home buyer, turnaround time does matter to some people because we win a lot of jobs based on that, right?
Yeah.
And especially when you're dealing with cash buyers or for sale by like off market for sale by owner, unrepresented buyer, we get a lot of those too based on our Google presence. But we get stuff like that where it's like, hey, we need it tomorrow. Can you get it done tomorrow? Or
Yeah.
we got a call earlier today. It was like, can you get it done today? And I was like, not today, but we can tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we can get it done the same day, but not always. But um, I think that's really important on, if any realtors are watching this, like if your people are picking their own company,
Yeah.
like what that means to the due diligence process if you have to
Yeah.
wait 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And you can say like it is your choice, client,
Yeah.
right? It is your choice.
Yeah.
100%. I am not here to I don't have an agenda in this.
Yeah.
Like it is my job to help you close on the house that you want to in a way that makes you feel comfortable. And if this
Yeah.
guy makes you feel comfortable, understand that these are the things that might happen because he can't get there in 2 days, because you're waiting 48 hours for his report instead of, a really quick turnaround, or hey, I'm going to have to schedule 9 different things for this because this guy doesn't do it.
Yeah.
And this is going to slow down the process and this is going to make it feel like an inefficient, slow process and may delay closing,
Yeah.
right? May have us pushing out due diligence. And you need to be aware of that because of this decision. So even though they may be a great inspector, that can absolutely delay the end goal, right? And I think like that's important for realtors to understand that a lot of them don't, quite honestly, is like how does selecting those vendors affect the transaction as a whole and affect your customer service and
Yeah.
ultimately referrals down the road,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's your job to coach them through it, even if they
Yep.
make a different decision than you would make,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. It's always like building expectations. That's what I always am
For
like,
sure.
we can do that. I'm good with whatever you want. But we might have to do this or
Every decision you make has consequences, good
yeah.
and bad, right?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so another question is, what have you seen, or what in your mind or your guys' minds are like big deal breakers that when you do a home inspection, and what do you guys feel like are?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like we talked about before, a deal breaker to me, like in like the broad concept, is
Yeah.
something that you can't get fixed during the transaction. You cannot get the cash to fix after the transaction,
Mhm.
and you don't want to live with it,
Yeah.
right? Like ultimately, that's the definition of a deal breaker.
Mhm.
Everybody is different. We've seen, the things that I would say that you need to focus on
Mhm.
during a transaction that could be a deal breaker if you don't investigate it.
Mhm.
Typically the complaint calls that we get down the road are usually related to water issues
Yeah.
and mechanical systems like
Yeah.
heating and air, right? Um, you want to get structural, like pay attention to the inspection report. When
Mhm.
an inspector recommends a structural engineer, like ask the reason, like, because you should question stuff, but
Yeah.
um, ultimately, like when we require ask or when we recommend that you should get a structural engineer, like there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
Like there is a line between contractor and engineer, right? And you need to go get the engineer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if you don't get the engineer, like what you're trying to prevent is moving into the house and having the wrong fix and it's still falling apart on you, right?
Yeah.
Or not paying enough attention to it. So, water's going to be the biggest enemy in the house.
Yeah.
So if you have major water issues, if you have high moisture content, if you have standing water somewhere,
Mhm.
if you have major bowing and cracking in a foundation, if your HVAC is 15 plus years
Yeah.
old, like you need to get it professionally evaluated by a
Yeah.
technician, not by a home inspector, in my opinion, because there's only like we are like you talk about like big costs, like we are just baselining HVAC, right?
Yeah.
Where there's so much more, but it's so technical and so cumbersome, like we can't get into it
Yeah.
in the right way. So I know that kind of answers your question in a roundabout way, but
No, it makes sense. It makes sense.
yeah,
I was just curious.
water, big mechanical issues, safety concerns,
Yeah.
roofing, HVAC, foundation, those are going to be your big costs.
Yeah, yeah, that's what we always look at. I'm just always curious from like a home inspector's point. So what issues seem like they're bigger, but maybe they're not? Like what is a common issue that seems like, oh my gosh, this is the deal breaker, but it really isn't. I know that, we think about things differently, but I'm just from your sense, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think the ones that, automatically get red flags from people immediately are any kind of foundation cracking,
Yeah,
right? And most brick cracking and most foundation cracking is relatively minor.
yeah,
Um, when you're looking at if there's moving and shifting present where it looks like it's not bearing the right way, I mean, there's different parameters that we have that I give my guys on like, hey, this is the line between not that big of a deal versus like you probably need to get it looked at. And even
yeah,
then, like I've got cracking in my basement that hasn't moved in 7 years, right?
yeah.
So I mean, some of that's just old house stuff, but so cracking and foundation is one of the big concerns. Um, I think when you're dealing with mold and fungal growth,
Mhm.
and termites, I
Yeah,
kind of like lump them all together because the root cause is high moisture content.
yeah,
But mold scares people.
yeah,
But ultimately, like, welcome to North Carolina. Like, you're gonna have mold. Like,
yeah,
it's in every single house
yeah,
and every single crawl space. And when it comes up, oh, is that a big concern? I was like, well, as long as it stays in your crawl space, like it's
yeah,
not that big of a deal. Like, you want your crawl space as dry as possible, and then that prevents mold from growing. But you're gonna have it in a wet climate like this, right? So um, investigate. I think like that's the biggest part of this, right? Like take the scary stuff and investigate it.
yeah,
See how scary it really is, and you'll find out by bringing the expert in. Like, is it a scary thing? Is it an expensive thing? Like, you get some like framing cracking, like joists are cracking or something like that, and like ultimately, like wood's malleable and easily fixable, and a lot of stuff you'd be surprised at how easy the fix is or how cheap the fix is, even though it sounds scary.
yeah, yeah. No, I definitely agree with you, and I do agree with you that mold also
It's a
is
four-letter word, right?
yeah,
Like you're bleeping this out every time I say it.
yeah. Except this one house. So we went because you know we work with like a lot of for sale by owners expired. We do all like the crazy
Yeah.
stuff that people don't like doing. And this one house we went to, the guy wanted us to list it, and this is a good story. And we walk up, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't look like he hasn't rented it. I mean, it looks like it's been vacant for a while longer. We walk in, there's a bird, and we're helping him get the bird out of the house, which A was weird. That was kind of weird.
Right.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, this is getting weird. He's like, yeah, somebody hasn't been in here for 6 months, but it's been good. So then we walk downstairs, and I'm actually allergic to mold, and he throws on a mask. I'm like, and why does he have a mask on? The walls are bowing in from black mold.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, this is not a good idea. I mean, like, it was the most mold I've ever seen, like everything. And then I look over and I'm like, there's gonna be snakes. I can see it. I can feel it.
Yeah.
Like,
Has to be.
yeah, there was one like flew out at Chad, and I'm like, I ran up the stairs, like out of the house. And then I look up and I'm like, there's a bunch of dead like snake skins all in like the gutters. I'm like, okay, I guess I just go back in. That was the whole
Yeah.
yeah, that would I would say that is a 4-letter word, that house. But that's the worst house I've ever been in. And we told them that we could not sell it.
Yeah.
It's probably a good one not to sell. Because
Yeah. Yeah. It's you know, and I think like you talk about common misconceptions, like you know,
yeah,
you said it right there, is just because mold is black doesn't mean it's not black mold,
yeah,
right? So, and it affects everybody differently.
yeah,
So, you
yeah,
know, there's tests
exactly.
that we can do to help identify what it is and like, is it a big concern? But,
Yeah,
you
that was
know, it's
yeah, I'm pretty sure that was black mold. Yeah.
yeah. When you get large quantities, like it doesn't matter if you're sensitive to it or not. Like you need like something's got to change there.
Yeah, when the walls are all bowing in, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was like that was the craziest house I've ever been to. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I'll never forget that house because it was bad.
Yeah.
Really bad. And then I went upstairs, it was funny too, because I didn't notice it the first time. The mold was coming up through the baseboards.
Nice.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, this has got a little bit of a problem.
A little bit.
Okay, so another question I have for you is how important is it that your real estate agent knows how to navigate the home inspection process, especially in like a competitive market, which it's changed, but it still is relatively competitive with some houses.
Well, it's in the market's different. So, you know, we're
Yeah.
recording this in October of 2024. I can't believe I just had to look at my computer to see what the year was. But you know, like it's you know, real estate agents haven't had to negotiate repairs the way they do now,
Yeah,
right? In the last 3 years, right?
yeah,
And
true.
um there's a lot of agents that have never had to do it and don't know how to do it, and some are learning and some aren't learning. And
Yeah,
you know, that's where deals fall apart, right? Like you
yeah,
lose deals basically over loans and inspection issues.
yeah,
And
so true.
so, you know, understanding like it's your job as the real estate agent, and I know you do a good job of this, Carrie, but like it's your job to take the issue and to sit your buyer down and say, look, you're gonna have to eat some of this cost if you want this house. Like, do you want this house where like I've heard agents go, we'll just negotiate everything.
Mhm.
Well, like don't make a promise you can't keep,
Yeah, you
right?
can't do that.
And
Yeah,
you can't do that. And anytime you're in a negotiation, a good negotiation always feels like everybody lost, right? Right?
yeah,
Like the buyer's not happy, the seller's not happy, and like, but then you know you probably struck an okay deal, right?
yeah.
But I think like like it's a question that I would ask any agent if I were searching one out is what is your process once this comes through? And the best agents that we deal with nip that in the bud either before we ever show up or at the end of the inspection when we're going through everything with them. They'll kind of cut us off at the end in a very polite way and just say like, hey, by the way, we get this report, we're going to sit down, I want you to go through it, I'm going to go through it,
Yeah.
we're going to come back together, we're going to see what's important, we're going to see what we need to get quotes on, we're going to see what we need to get further evaluated, and then we're going to develop a game plan from there,
Yep.
right? And
That's exactly my process. Yep.
right, and that's the way it should be, where we've, you know, like I've watched agents tell like their clients get emotional, right, and say we're out, and the repair is only $2,000,
Yeah.
and like I've had to pull the agent aside, and it hasn't happened in a while, but like had to
Yeah.
pull agents aside before and be like, the math doesn't work,
Yeah.
right? Your client is going to spend more money going and finding another house than they will if they just eat the $2,000 repair and move here,
Yeah.
right? If they
Yeah.
don't want the house, they don't want the house, right? Like if they don't want the house, like by all means, go find the house that you want. But
Yeah.
if you want the house, sit there and really like go through the pros and cons and the math and like, hey, like if we go out of contract here and you really want this house, like
Yeah.
you remember we searched for 4 weeks for this thing. Like,
Yeah.
are you ready to do that again? It's like,
Yeah.
I'll do it, but like, do you
Yeah.
really want to do it?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's just like, so it just seems so scary sometimes, a home inspection, like, and if
Yeah.
you don't prepare them, like I always tell everybody, it's gonna seem like the house was falling down, so don't worry.
Yep.
Could be brand
Yep.
new.
For sure.
It's still gonna be like that. So yeah, I
For
definitely
sure.
agree with you. What are some lesser known aspects of home inspections that buyers often overlook?
So lesser known inspection issues buyers overlook. Um, I think really one of the biggest things that we see that doesn't get done during a home inspection is really what happens afterward. And it's you got to be careful who you listen to,
Yep.
right? A
So
home inspector, some home inspectors are going to be very honest.
mhm.
I tend to say like we're going to be really bluntly honest with the realtor,
Yeah.
because oftentimes the client can't handle
Yeah.
like taking
No,
the kid
so
gloves
true.
off, right?
Yeah.
But it's and you can take, because you've seen it all the time, like you can take that information and you can work with it.
Yep.
But the amount of things that we've seen over the years where there are concerns and they're not being evaluated properly, because I mean, this, like due diligence can move really, really fast.
Yep.
And sometimes like things are moving really fast and you need to take a stop and you need to really look at like, a good example of this is a client we had a couple years ago that there were 10 plumbing issues in
Hmm.
her house.
That's a lot.
And yeah, it's a lot, right? And you as an agent should recognize that that's a lot.
Yeah.
It was at a time where things weren't being negotiated, so they just got the inspection and just kind of tossed it off to the side. Well,
Yeah.
they moved in, and a plumber wants to repipe the entire house,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because there's leaking issues and there's venting issues and all these kind of things. And she called us and she's like, "Why didn't you tell us?" And I'm like, "We did. Like, we had like all these symptoms of these
Yeah.
10 plumbing things. Like, it's not our job. Like, we can." Kind of verbally help tie some stuff together for you. But we're like, again, we're not plumbers.
Yeah.
And like, you need to get plumbing system evaluated when you see multiple concerns with the same system, like getting that evaluated to understand like sometimes a lot of smaller problems,
Hmm.
there's a larger cost,
Yeah.
right? So it's, again, you don't want to treat the symptom, you want to treat the issue. So I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing that people aren't really prepared for in a home inspection is that, and we can help with that, right? Like we do work with some realtors that don't want to be involved in that part of the process because they don't know it well enough and they
Yeah.
understand they don't know it well enough, right? And that's totally
Yeah.
fine, right? And I think that's another misconception is that your home inspector should be here for you beyond just getting the home inspection,
Yeah.
right? Let us be a resource. If you can't, if your home inspector's not being a resource, call us anyway and we can help. Like, we're not going to throw other home inspectors under the bus. We're not going to like
Yeah.
badmouth anybody. Like, but we're going to take, if you can't get a hold of them and you need somebody to talk through the issues with you, like
Yeah.
there's plenty of people that'll come out, that will do that and we'll help and see the report and say like, hey, like these are things that you probably should get done, right? And that goes back to the serving mindset that we have.
Yeah, you guys have done that for me with
Yeah.
other inspection. I mean, I've called you guys. So yeah, you guys are definitely there for anyone to call anytime.
Yep.
So another question I just have a couple more for you is
No, you're good.
this okay. So people always ask me this, did it fail? And I'm like, what? Or did it pass?
Always.
And I'm like, I always ask a question that I'm like, it doesn't fail. But anyways, but it's a common question. So
Mhm.
can a home fail a home inspection?
I mean, technically, no. It's not a pass fail thing. I think the only
Yeah.
thing that we do is a pass fail is that shows up as pass fail is water testing. We
Yeah.
send it to a lab and the lab comes back and says like it either passed or it failed the
Yeah.
the level, the acceptable levels of what's there. You know, and I think that is one of the misconceptions of a home inspection is that it is information, it is for your purpose. It is not a requirement to get things fixed. It is so like just because there's 20 issues on there doesn't mean that the seller has to fix it. And I'm sure you explain it's an as
Yeah,
is state. So like it, you know, like they don't have to do anything.
they have to do
Um,
nothing unless they want to.
but right, but we do like we get random calls that, you know, like of people that are like, hey, we want a home inspection done because we want to force the seller to do these repairs. And I'm like, it's not really what we're here to do, right?
Yeah,
It's for your information, and what you do with it is on you.
yeah.
You know, we're not inspecting based on code.
Mhm. Mhm.
So like code is very pass fail oriented,
Yeah,
right? Of like, hey, this plumbing is not installed correctly, you failed the inspection.
yeah,
That's not the kind of inspection that we do.
yeah.
So it is a symptoms of a problem, pointing out potential concerns, and
Mhm.
helping guide you through the process if you need to get it fixed.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. My last question I have for you is, what are like the best preventative measures for a homeowner that you guys have seen through all the inspections you've done? What is the
So
easiest things?
so like the top three issues that we find in homes are typically related to water,
Mhm.
um, what I call dad repairs.
Okay.
And you know, dads that think they know what they're doing but they really
Yeah,
don't know what they're doing.
yeah. Yep, I got
And
that.
yep, and deferred maintenance, right?
Mhm.
So deferred maintenance are the small maintenance things that you don't take care of immediately that become larger issues. So
Yep, they keep
a
adding.
lot of this, yeah, I mean, a lot of it depends on skill level, right? So I would say like always have your HVAC maintained,
Mhm.
right? Get a yearly contract. It is
Yeah,
not that expensive for what
no,
it
it's
is.
really cheap. Yeah.
I mean, I think we spend $250 a year, and
Mhm.
they come out twice a year and just make sure everything's working properly. Now they will make suggestions because that's how they make money, right? But
Yeah.
and they're not invalid suggestions, but you know, like we have our system maintained, like having a pest control company that services your home. And
Mhm.
you know, there are handyman companies out there that will do general home maintenance for you, just come out once a quarter and caulk things up and secure doorknobs and all that stuff. Where like when you talk about prepping a house for sale,
Mhm.
the more that you can do ahead of time to showcase like, hey, look, we have maintenance records on our HVAC, we
Yeah.
have general maintenance done once a quarter, and here's what that report looks like, and here's our
Yep.
contract with our pest control company, and here's the roof inspection that we get done once a year because roofers will come out and crawl your roof for free, right? Here's the free, like if you leverage the free inspections that experts in the field do,
Mhm.
yes, it is a sales tool, like 100%. Like you need to know that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if they're good and they're honest, they'll tell you what all's going on, and then you can address the issues because it's you're not going in your crawl space. Like,
Yeah.
and even if you did, like, you don't know what you're looking at,
Yeah,
right?
you really don't. Yeah, I mean, you kind
Right.
of know a little bit, you learn, but I mean, but again, we look at a lot of houses a year, so yeah, for sure.
I mean, my dad's a, you know, my dad is also the champion of dad repairs, but,
Yeah.
you know, like he's a pretty handy guy, right? He's an engineer, he can make things work. And, you know, I remember like there were ants in our kitchen one day and there were flying ants going
Yeah.
everywhere. And, um, you know, not realizing like when they didn't go away that they were termites,
Oh,
right? And, so like, I think like those are some of the things where like, don't try to do it all on your own. Bring experts out where needed. And then when you're about to list your property, make it available and make it transparent. And I think like that's the thing that we see, because when it's available and transparent,
yeah.
home inspectors not only will tell you the bad things, but they'll also pick that stuff up. They'll be nosy, they'll look through it, and they'll compliment the seller, right? You know how
Yeah.
much easier that makes a negotiation,
Oh, totally. With
right? Like
here.
it,
Yeah.
how much less scary that is for the buyer when
Yeah.
you have all those maintenance records
Yeah.
laid out in front of you,
Yeah,
right?
for
And you can
sure.
do it relatively cheap.
Yeah. No, definitely. And it's something you can do. Like I always tell people with like oh, a warranty too. I'm like,
Mhm.
warranty's gonna definitely, you gotta pay for it yearly, but it also helps. for sure.
Yeah, it's that's going to help protect your back pocket in case something bad
Yeah.
happens, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, we appreciate all the time that you've taken with us today, because I know we've spent quite a bit of time and you've been answering all of our questions and
Look,
did
you knew I could talk. Like, don't.
I know, I know. I appreciate it. I appreciate it so much. I like it when we can chat and talk about anything. So it's pretty great. And you have done amazing explaining everything about home inspections and everything. And all Drew's information will be below in the comments. And also you can reach out to me. I've got his info. So I will definitely connect you to Drew and his fabulous team of home inspectors, which I use all the time. But again, I want to say thank you so much for being on here and spending time with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to help.
Yeah, thank you again.